I'm going to start sharing. I don't know what happened. I was sharing. Yeah. Tell me, can you watch it? Yes. Tell me, please, can you watch it?
Yes, teacher.
All right. Okay. So as I was talking to you, today we're going to start another module. This is one of the last modules. Remember that we have 10 modules. So this is the 9th. And as I told you before, so we have finished with all the skills, related to the language, the major skills, because we have other sub skills to inside each major skill. So we have sub skills, so that we have seen it in all the lessons and all the sessions that we had. So today we're going to start with this module, and we are going to talk about 2 points in this module: how to teach grammar and how to teach vocabulary. So these are important aspects when we learn a language. So students need to know about the grammar, and they need to manage a range of vocabulary. All right. So today we're going to start with this. So 2 sessions of these modules are going to be related to the grammar section, and the other 2 sessions of these modules are going to be related to the vocabulary aspect. So don't forget it. Don't forget it. So this first session and the second one are going to be about the grammar aspect of the language. And the third and the fourth session would be about the vocabulary aspect. Don't forget about it. So today we are going to start talking about what is grammar, what grammar is for you, and also we're going to analyze in a brief way, in a general aspect, some approaches to teach grammar. So how can we teach grammar? And we have some approaches, some methodologies or activities that we're going to use to teach grammar. Let's start. Oh, what's going on? Yeah, I think my mouse doesn't want to work. Yeah, so let's start. What is grammar? So tell me, what is grammar? Tell me. So we were talking about this aspect when we talked about the writing and also the speaking, no? But most specifically when we talked about the writing, because when we write something, as we have seen it before, so you have to put your ideas into a paper, and we talked about the accuracy, how effective you write, with fluency. So, and it's important to know grammar. So tell me, what you can remember about grammar? What is grammar?
Teacher, grammar is one part of the linguistic, and it's important to know because with this we can know the structure of the word and how we can use correct the words in English in this case.
Yeah, that's right, Lucy. Okay, so the structure of words and sentences, phrases and sentences. Now remember that when we talked about grammar, we're going to analyze 2 aspects of the language. As Lucy says, it's part of the linguistics, the study of the language, because it involves the structure of a word, the structure of a phrase, and the structure of a sentence. So we are going to analyze this. That's it. Very good, Lucy. Oh, Mary wrote something in the chat. Mary says it's a system and a structure of language. Floor says it's the rules to form sentences. All right, Floor. Diana says here, writes in the chat, rules of language governing the sounds, words, sentences, and other elements. All right, Diana. So Diana wrote a wider concept of grammar. Notice that she says that not just word, sentences, sounds, and other elements. All right, that's good. So here we're going to analyze. So we're going to see some descriptions of grammar. Let's see if you were right or not. No, but generally you were right. Yes, grammar in simple terms is related to the structure of the language, not the system of the language, referring to many aspects. Let's see. So I told you, grammar is the system of a language. People sometimes describe grammar as the rules of a language, but in fact, no language has rules, right? So we could say the grammar is related to the rules of the language. And so this is a general term referring to grammar, no? Rules, patterns. If we use the word rules, we suggest that somebody created the rules first and then spoke the language, like a new game. Notice here, we say that they are the rules, so somebody created those rules. And it was like a game, no? When you're gonna start a game, so you need to know the rules, no? In order to play it well, no? And in order how to win the game, right? So if you say this, or we use these word rules, so we could think that some people created, that somebody created those rules, and then they spoke the language. But as you know, the language appeared, if we could say, with no rules, right? Because people started talking. First, they wrote, some countries or some people started writing and then speaking, or vice versa, no? Speaking and then writing. So notice, if we talked about rules, there must be someone who created them. But languages, as I told you, did not start like that. Languages started by people making sounds, which evolve into words, phrases, and sentences. Notice, languages appear with sounds. Human beings start producing sounds, and these sounds involve words, phrases, and sentences. No commonly spoken language is fixed. All languages change over time. What we call grammar is simply a reflection of a language at a particular time. Notice, this is very important to remember. Here you have two ideas that support the first one. No, what it says that some people describe grammar as the rules of the language. But in fact, no language has rules. Because here, there are two ideas, two facts. The first one is that people started producing a language with sounds. And the second one, that no commonly spoken language is fixed. Because the languages are changing, are evolving. For example, English, it has been changing. During this year, it has been changing. For example, in English, we could say, or we could talk about 3 periods of English, or 3 stages of English. The first one is the early English, then the middle English, and nowadays we are talking about contemporary English. For example, at the beginning of English, so the language was so different as we know now. It's different. Then we pass to the Middle English. For example, Middle English, a very common representative of Middle English is Shakespeare. I don't know if you have heard about this famous writer, Shakespeare. For example, some people says that Shakespeare introduced a lot of words in the English language because this person started writing plays, poems, and many other types of tests, written tests. So the language, notice, the language is not fixed. It is changing and changing and changing over the years. That's why we couldn't say it exactly that grammar refers to rules. That's why here at the end says that grammar is simply a reflection of a language at a particular time. For example, let me tell you something. In English, for example, if we talked about the sounds, the vowels that we use in the early English and Middle English is not the vowels that we use now in the contemporary English. Some specific syntactical structure or morphological structure are different from the past to the English that we use now. So the language is changing, and we start reflecting, some aspects of the language at a particular time. So we cannot say exactly the grammar, the rules. In general term, yeah, we refer as grammar the rules of the language. But at the beginning, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. So here you have another definition of grammar. Grammar is the structural foundation of our ability to express ourselves. The more we are aware of how it works, the more we can monitor the meaning and effectiveness of the way we and others use the language. So this definition was given by David Crystal, who is a famous linguist and professor, university or college professor. He said that in 2004. So notice here, according to this person, grammar is the structural foundation. But about what? About our ability to express. So the more we are aware about it works, the more we can monitor, we can manage the meaning and effectiveness of the way we and others use the language. So this is according to David Crystal. Another one. William Somerset Maugham, the summing up 1938, says, it is necessary to know grammar, and it's better to write grammatically than not, but it's well to remember that grammar is common speech formulated. Usage is the only test. Notice, according to this person, according to William, grammar is common speech formulated. Notice here, what is the definition of grammar according to William Somerset? Now we are going to talk about the relationship between grammar and meanings. Remember that grammar is the foundation, the structural foundation of our ability to express ourselves. And when we express ourselves, we say meanings, all right? We express meanings. So what is the relationship of grammar and meanings? So let's see. Grammar has two kinds of meanings. We have the representational meaning. Notice representational meaning, which enable us to use language to describe the world in terms of how, when, and where things happen. This is the representational. So we use the language to describe the world, how, when, and where things happen. This is the representational meaning. For example, here you have two sentences. The sun sets at 7:30. The children are playing in the garden. So you're describing what's happening or what happens around the world. No? You're giving facts or some information about these situations. So this is the representational meaning. Let's pass to the second meaning that we could give with grammar. The interpersonal meaning. Interpersonal facilitate the way we interact, the interaction with other people when, for example, we need to get things done using language. So the meaning that we use to interact, meanings that we use to interact with other people. Here you have a situation, an example, when we want to get things done using this language, this meaning. Look at the example below. Here you have some phrases in some cases or sentences, and there is a difference, right? For example, tickets, or maybe you could say, tickets, please. Or can you show me your tickets? May I see your tickets? Would you mind if I had a look at your tickets? What's the difference between these words or phrases or sentences? The message is the same, right? That the person is asking for the tickets. But what's the difference? Can you tell me?
Teacher, the structure of the sentences. Sometimes they use only one word or a subject, or a verb.
Yeah, all right. But remember that we're talking about the interaction.
Courtesy, good evening, teacher.
Yes, courtesy, politeness. No? For example, the first word, just a word, is a rude way, no? Tickets. So a person asks you for the tickets and just say tickets. So it's rude, no? It's not so polite. But you say tickets, please. You change the way you are interacting. Yes, Floor. Formal or informal, no? Or rude or polite. Notice that kind of way you interact with people. And in order to interact with people, you use some structures, right? Oh, you want to give more formality or more politeness to your expressions or to your language. So you use, may I see your tickets? Would you mind if I had a look at your tickets? Notice that you're using these structures to interact, the way you interact with other people. All right? So notice these two meanings that we could get with grammar. The representational meaning, which we use the language to describe the world, right? We use the structures to describe the world. Exactly, Diane, that's it. Informal or more formal, yes. So as Diana says here in the chat, or writes in the chat, so the other use of grammar related to meaning is the way we interact with people. So we use some structure in some context, and we use other structures in other context. Notice here, notice here, these two kind of meanings that we could have in grammar. Yeah, don't forget it. Don't forget it. So with grammar, we could have two kind of meanings, representational and interpersonal. Representational, we use it to describe the world, the things that happens or are happening around us, to give facts, to give information. Interpersonal, we use this structure, these meanings to interact with people. No? The way we interact with people changes if you change the structures. All right? If you change the structures, you could change the way you interact with people. No? As you told me before, from a rude way or a polite way, from a formal or informal way. Notice here you use some structures in some contexts. All right. Yeah, don't forget it. Now, these two meanings that we could have with grammar. Importance of grammar. Let's see here. What do you think? You have to tell me your opinion. Would you agree or disagree with the following statement? I'm going to show you this statement. Here we have these two statements. It's not important for students to use correct grammar when they are talking as long as they are getting their message across. So notice the final message, no? So it's not important to use for students. It's not important for students to use correct grammar when they are talking, when they speak, when they talk, as long as they are getting their message. So in other words, if they are understood, it doesn't matter grammar. What do you think about it? What do you think about this statement? Do you agree or disagree about this statement?
I agree till certain level, because if they are beginning, okay, speaking or learning, okay, the language, it's okay. Doesn't matter how they tell us, okay, the things. But if they are in a high level, so that's very important. So they need to have a correct manner of writing, of telling you things, right? So I think that.
All right, Yanela, that's right. So notice that we're just talking, because the next statement is related to writing. First, when they talk, is it important to use a correct grammar when a student talks? If they could be understood? Because the second statement is related to writing. It's not important for students to use correct grammar when they are writing, as long as they are getting their message across. So we have two skills here, when they talk and when they write. What do you think about the importance of grammar? Is it important grammar when they talk? Is it important grammar when they write? Or not? So Janela told us their opinion about it. So she said that at the beginning level, so it's not so important. I think it has some importance, no? Because if there are no grammar, I think they cannot produce some statements or some words, no? Maybe just some basic words, but not so correct. No, here we're talking about also the correctness. Yeah, tell me.
Teacher, I'm not agree. I'm disagree, because I think it's important to use a correct grammar in both aspects. If you talk, if you writing, is very important. If you are start in learning the English, is very important. I think it's important in these two aspects, when you write or when you talk also.
All right, Lucy. Okay. So according to Lucy, well, she says that it's important not to know grammar when you write or when you speak. Any other idea? Any other idea? Do you agree or disagree about these statements? When you talk, notice the two contests. When you talk and when you write, no? It's generally supposed, no? It's generally supposed that when we talk, it's not so important grammar, because sometimes we, in informal, specifically when we speak in an informal way, so we are going to break some rules, no? No, remember when we talked about the speaking and writing, and we compare, no, the written grammar and the oral grammar. So in the written grammar, the structure.
Yeah, gracias. Sí.
Elia, your microphone, please. Okay, thank you, Elia.
Sorry, teacher.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry.
Being late, I'm in Lucanas. Ayacucho is a little difficult for me. Sorry,
yeah.
teacher.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry.
You. Thank you.
Okay, don't worry, Elia, don't worry. All right, and notice here, no, remember when we talked about these aspects, no? When we speak specifically informally, sometimes we break the rules of grammar, no? Because we use some ellipses, or we make false startings, we overlap, no? Remember, overlap. So it means that we are going to do some things, no? Maybe we paraphrase when we don't know exactly the word. So we are going to use some strategies to communicate, no? Remember when we talked about it. And sometimes these strategies involves that we are going to break some structures, no? some structures, some patterns of the language. So as I told you before, it's generally supposed that when we talk, the grammar, the use of grammar is not so important if you are understood. But when we write, it means that we are going to write. Remember the differences between these two skills. No? When we write, it's generally supposed to that we have more time to analyze, no? To analyze, more time to think what we're going to say or write in the paper. So it means that we're going to use more correct structures when we write, no? But as you told us, there must be a balance, no? There must be a balance. And I agree with Janela says that it depends on also on the levels, no? On the levels of the students. At the beginning levels, maybe it's not so important to pressure, we want to say that, our students to use correct grammar because it's going to be an interruption of the fluency, no? An interruption of the fluency when they start talking. That's what we call this communication strategies. But when we write, also we talked about fluency, no? Remember, we talked about the last module. When we write, we also talked about fluency. When you think too much, for example, there is a theory, no? This is a theory, the monitor hypothesis. This is using, this is said by Stephen Krashen. So he said that the monitor hypothesis, when it's high, it's overused, so it's going to interrupt the fluency of the language. If you use it in a moderate way, so it's going to be helpful because it's going to help you to be effective using the language, no? So here we could have so many ideas about these two aspects, no? Oh, yeah, here someone wrote something in the chat. Diana says, I disagree. If they are with their friends, we can speak way informal, yeah? But if they are in a school or university, they should use the grammar. Yeah, this is what we were talking, no? That was I told you. It depends also the kind of language that you're going to use, no? You're going to talk or write, no? For example, when we write an informal letter, specifically, or maybe the other situation that is happening now, no? When we chat to our friends using WhatsApp or Telegram, so we forgot the grammar also because we reduce words, we use some constructions, we use ellipses, so like we were speaking, right? So it depends. Yeah, you're right, Jana. Exactly. Exactly. And this is very important. Then we are going to talk about it. No? So the type of grammar, there are two types of grammar, the descriptive grammar and the prescriptive grammar. For example, we as teachers, we use the prescriptive grammar. So some specific patterns. And we need to use these patterns. If you don't use these patterns, so it's not correct. And we as teachers, we sometimes use this kind of grammar, no, the prescriptive one, because we check, no, we check our students' production, no, in a speaking or in a written way. And the other one is the descriptive grammar. So it means the grammar that we actually use when we speak or when we write. So we have these two kinds of grammar. All right, that's good. Very good, very good. So let's continue talking about grammar. Remember, accuracy is important because from the point of view of the hearer, the reader, inaccuracy, even if it doesn't affect meaning, it's very important, the meaning, the message. From the point of view of the teacher, notice, professionalism means teaching the language as best we can. This is what I told you before. The descriptive and the prescriptive. The descriptive is when people use the language in real situations. And the prescriptive is that you have to use the language as the best you can. Notice, so this is called accuracy. How effective you use the language. And you don't follow these patterns or these structures, so you are not accurate. So you're not using the language well. Yeah? Notice these 2 points of view. These 2 points of view. According to the point of view of the hearer or the reader, inaccuracy could be acceptable if it doesn't affect the meaning. If you can understand the message. So inaccuracy is not so important. So you could accept inaccuracy. But from the point of view of the teacher or university, as Diana wrote here in the chat, if they are in school or university, they should use grammar effectively, accuratively. So professionalism means teaching the language as best we can. So we have to check our students' production. No? At the beginning, maybe you could accept some inaccuracy in your students in order not to stop fluency, as I told you before. But it doesn't mean that you're going to accept every mistake they have. No, it's impossible, because they would have mistakes from all the period of learning process. So we need to correct. We need to correct. And as I told you before, we call this the prescriptive grammar. Remember? And the prescriptive grammar. All right, let's continue with the next slide. With a widespread institution of standards. Oh, Elia wrote something here. Sorry, accuracy refers to how correct learners use the language system. How correct? Yes, this is accuracy. That's right, Elia. So with a widespread institution of standards and high-stakes tests, students are expected to recognize and use correct grammar. Nowadays it's very common that we are asked, as teachers and as students, we are asked to take some international examination, as you have maybe here before, the IELTS or the TOEFL exam or the Cambridge exam, CAT, PET, FCE, CAE. So we have a lot of higher standard, here's this, tests, and we are required to recognize and use correct grammar. Educators can no longer afford to assume that students acquire an accurate understanding of formal language structures through reading. So it's very important, the input. It's very important, the input that our students could receive. Now, we were talking about the importance of grammar. So notice here, there are different points of view according to the person who speaks or who talks or who listens, and according to the point of view of a teacher, of a professor, of an educator. So we have different points of view according to grammar. Also according to the level of our students, if they are in the beginning, basic level, intermediate level, or maybe according if they were asked to, or they were required to take some higher standard tests, international examination. So it means that they must use grammar effectively. All right, effectively. Now we are going to analyze more what grammar involves, all right? And we are going to see here a framework, a three-dimensional grammar framework. So what is the composition of grammar, all right? What elements or what aspects compose the grammar? And there are three, as you can see here, 3 dimensions. We have 3 dimensions when we talked about grammar. Let's see. Oh yeah, going back to the Elia wrote in the chat, accuracy in other words is the correct use of tenses, verb forms, among others. Yeah. So how effectively you use these patterns, these structures. All right, let's see. 3 dimensions. Let's see what they are. Grammatical structure not only have form, they are also used to express meaning in context and appropriate use. Notice here in this paragraph, we have the 3 dimensions of grammar. Because sometimes when we hear, grammar teacher, yeah, the structures, how we are going to order words, not the form, the structures, but not just that, because it involves also meaning and the use that we give to these structures or patterns. So these are the three dimensions of grammar: form, meaning, and use. Let's see here. In this pie, you have the three dimensions of grammar. Form is related to the structure. Meaning is related to semantics. And use is related to pragmatics. Can you remember what was the definition of pragmatics? Can you remember? Pragmatics? Anybody? Pragmatics? No, nobody? Pragmatics is one field of linguistics, huh? Pragmatics. No idea? Yeah, let me tell you, let me refresh your mind. Maybe you forgot because I told you, I remember that I told you the definition of pragmatics. Here says how we use the language. Pragmatics in simple terms, remember, pragmatics refers how we use the language in different contexts. As you can see here in the paragraph, to express meaning in contents appropriate. So in different contexts, we're going to use the language in different contexts. According to each context, so you're going to use some pieces of grammar, as we have seen before, no? As we have seen before. Tickets. Show me your tickets, please. May I see your tickets, please? Would you mind if I can see your tickets, please? Notice you use different structures according to different context. If it is a formal context, we use would you mind, no? Or please. If it is informal, you don't use would you mind, maybe just the noun, tickets, or tickets, please, no? Informal. But it's informal, or would you mind? Could you show me? May I see? Notice that you change. You change the structure because of the context. And we call this pragmatics, praxis. Remember, it comes from the word praxis. Praxis means to put something in practice. So the knowledge that you have of the language, so you put it into practice in different contexts, in different situations. So this is pragmatics. So notice grammar involves a lot of aspects, not just the form, not just the structure. It refers also to the meanings that we have seen it before and the use that we give to the language structure or language patterns. Let's see more about this three-dimensional grammar framework. When we talked about form, we could ask this question: how is it formed? How is it structured? When we talked about the meaning, what does it mean? And the use, when and why is it used? Notice the questions that we could have for each of these dimensions. Form, how is it formed? How is it structured? Meaning, what does it mean? What is the meaning of this pattern, of this structure? And the use, when and why is it used? Let's see here. Notice we have these three dimensions: form or structure. So we have morphosyntactic and lexical patterns, and phonemic and graphemic patterns. This is what your partner said, no? Not just words, phrases, or sentences. Here involves more than that. Sounds, phonemic, letters, graphemic. Notice morphosyntactic. When we say here morphosyntactic, involves two aspects of the language, no? Morphology and syntax. Morphology is how you form the words, how you make words. This is morphology. And syntax refers how you make sentences, phrases, basic aspect, no? Phrases, sentences. And lexical is related to the vocabulary. But then here you have also some phonemic or graphemic patterns too. Let's pass to the meaning or semantics. Lexical meaning, grammatical meaning. Can you remember about it? When we talked about morphology, can you remember? Lexical morphemes, grammatical morphemes. No, this is related to this aspect, that we have two kind of meanings, a lexical meaning and a grammatical meaning. Can you remember something about it? What's the difference between lexical meaning and grammatical meaning? Can you tell me? Can you tell me? What's the difference about these two meanings? Lexical meaning and grammatical meaning.
Lexical, it's as in Spanish, lexical. So the words and vocabulary, the range of vocabulary that a student have or we have in language, I mean, right?
Yeah, this is related, as Janela says, yes, you're right, you're right. The vocabulary, yeah.
Yeah, and grammatical is the correct way of writing the language, right? So if so having present the tense, the articles, or some everything about the structure, right?
Yeah, all right, all right. Yeah, notice here, yeah, you're right. When we talked about the vocabulary, no, both are related to the vocabulary. But remember, we are going to remember something about morphology. When we talked about morphology, we have two kinds of morphemes. Remember, the language is composed by morphemes. No? Morphemes is the smallest meaningful unit in the language. So it's a unit which has meaning. And this meaning could be lexical or grammatical. Lexical is the meaning that you could find in words which has a definition, a concept, an idea. Aha, Diana wrote something in the chat. Yeah, Diana, you're right, you're right. This is a kind of differentiate the lexical meaning and grammatical meaning. Content words and function words. Content words are nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So when we talked about content words, so we could say that these words have a concept, have an idea. All right? For example, a noun. Horse. Oh, yeah, it's an animal with 4 legs. No? So we have a concept about this word. Oh, an adjective, sad. Oh, it's a person who is not happy, no? Notice you have an idea, you have a concept, a definition. Oh, an adverb. Oh, here you have well. Oh, yeah, it's something that is related to right, no? Something right, something good. Notice, these words are lexical morphemes because they have a concept. They have an idea. As Diana wrote here, content words carry meaning. And function words, that's related to vocabulary too. Function words, we have prepositions, articles, conjunctions. So they don't have a concept, all right? They don't have a definition. They have a function. That's why we call them function words. They have a function. Most of these words are morphemes because they are not just words. Then we're going to analyze it that these are not just related to words. We could find these morphemes in letters or sounds, and they have a meaning. All right? Remember, morphemes. We're talking about morphemes. So these grammatical words, if you could say like this, yeah, they don't have a definition. Can you give me a definition of the article a? Can you give me a definition, a concept of the article a? No, right? It doesn't have a definition. Don't get confused. No, teacher, but a means una. No, this is the translation, no the definition. All right, because if you say horse, what is the definition of horse? It's an animal with 4 legs. And what is the translation of horse? Caballo. So translation and definition is different. Translation is when you put the word into the first language to a second language or foreign language. But the definition is a concept, an idea of that word. It has meaning, but it's a lexical meaning. But when we talk about grammatical, as I told you, the article, the, or and, but, can you give me a concept of but? The preposition, the conjunction but? Does it have a definition, a concept? No, right? So because these words are just to connect, no? To give more specific details to the content words. So, but as I told you, when we talked about grammatical meaning, it just not words. And then with the example, because then I'm going to show you an example, we're going to realize it. So don't forget, meaning we have 2, lexical meaning and grammatical meaning. The use, pragmatics. Let's first to the use and pragmatics. We have here the social context, linguistic discourse context, and presuppositions about context. So it's related to the context. So the language, what we are going to use in different contexts. That's what the question says, no? When, why is it used? When do you use that structure? Why do you use that structure or pattern? I'm talking about structures, patterns, not just rules. Structures or patterns. And they change because of the social context, because of the linguistic discourse context, or presuppositions about context. So in general, it's related to the context. The language, the structure of patterns that we use in different contexts. Let's see. Don't forget about these 3 dimensions and notice all the aspects involving grammar. Morphosyntactical and lexical patterns, phonemic and graphemic patterns, meanings, lexical or grammatical meanings, and different contexts. According to the social context, according to the linguistic discourse context, or presuppositions about context. Let's see here. We are going to talk about possessives. This is an example. Form, meaning, and use of possessives. We know that in order to make possessives, one of the structures or patterns that we use to talk about possession is the famous apostrophe S, no? Or S apostrophe, no? It depends on some rules, no? Some context, no? Graphemic context, or sounds, or phonological context too. As you can see here, that we have three ways that we are going to pronounce this apostrophe S or S apostrophe. Three ways. Using the sound S, using the sound Z, or using the sounds is or is. No, we use the short E or the schwa. No, here you have the schwa. Is. So we have three different phonological contexts. Notice, when we talked about a meaning, so what's the meaning of this apostrophe S? Or genitive, no? We call this structure the genitive case. So it means possession or relationship. This is the meaning of this structure. Possession, this is the most common, or relationship, no? John's mother or David's uncle, we're talking about a relationship. Oh, sorry. And the use, so we could say that the apostrophe S versus possessive determiner. When do we use the possessive S and when do we use the possessive determiner? So we need to know when to use it. Or the apostrophe S versus of the paraphrastic possession expression or phrase. Or the apostrophe S versus noun compounds. So we need to know when to use this apostrophe. So this is related to the use, no? When do we use the apostrophe S? In what type of context do we use this structure? So notice here we have form, we have meaning, and we have use. Let's see. We're going to analyze in a deeper way. The form, as I told you, is this, no? With these three different ways to be pronounced. You write apostrophe S, but you pronounce in three ways. S, Z, is. And you have here more meanings. So here you have description, amount, relationship, part and whole, origin, and agent. And the use, we have these three, no? We could compare with a possessive determiner. Remember, the possessive determiners are the possessive adjectives, no? My, her, his, or the possessive pronouns, no? So we have yours, theirs. Remember that we use this structure to talk about possessions too, no? And also to indicate relationships, no? Oh, he's my uncle. Oh, he's his uncle. Notice. So when do we use the apostrophe S and when do we use the possessive determiner? And also the paraphrastic expression of that, no? And the noun compounds, no? That we are going to talk about these relationships. So let's see. The form and structure. Here we are going to talk about the inflecting nouns and allomorphs. I don't know if you can remember about these terms, the inflecting nouns and alloforms. Inflecting nouns is related to inflection. What is inflection? Can you remember? We talked about this in morphology. Remember, this is the morphosyntactic. No, remember this, the form, when we talked about the form, we're talking about the morphosyntactic and phonological or graphemic aspects. The second one is related to the morphological, phonological and graphemic aspects. Let's start with the first one, the morphological and syntactical. Inflection. What is inflection? Inflectional morphemes. Remember about this topic, this term, inflectional morphemes. What are the inflectional morphemes? And here you have inflecting nouns. So you're going to use inflection in nouns. No? When you use this, we commonly use with nouns. John's father. John is a noun. So you are inflecting the noun. That's why here it says inflecting nouns. So we use this possessive to inflect nouns. Inflection, remember, inflectional morphemes are the morphemes which gives a grammatical meaning. Remember? So this apostrophe S has a meaning, but it's a grammatical meaning. It doesn't have a lexical meaning. Remember these two terms before, lexical and grammatical. So this apostrophe S has meaning. It's not a word. All right? The apostrophe is not a word. That's why when Diana wrote here, no content words and function words. Yeah, Diana was right. Yeah, was right. It's correct. But it's not just words. Because when we talked about morphemes, a word is composed by morphemes. Remember, a word is composed by morphemes. In order to get it clear, I'm going to write here an example. Yeah? I'm going to write here an example. Yeah. Here, for example, talking about this inflectional, yeah? Inflectional. I'm going to make it bigger. Just give me a second. Yeah. All right. For example, notice this word. I'm going to write this word. Could you see it? Yes? Boys. Oh, Diana, is the change a noun adjective? No. When you change words, you use derivational morphemes, not inflectional. Inflectional doesn't change the type of word. And we are going to analyze it here. Notice here the word. You're watching what I'm writing, no? Boy. Boy is a word, right? Boy is a word. And boy is composed by a lexical morpheme. Yeah, this is a lexical morpheme. Remember, boy is a lexical morpheme because it has a lexical meaning. Ah, boy is a person who is male. This is the definition. This is the concept. So it means that it has a lexical meaning. But what happens if I add S? Ah, teacher, it's a word. Yes, it's another word. We don't have here two words, but we have two morphemes. Can you remember about it? Can you remember about it? Boy, boys. Excellent, Elia. Inflection is the process of adding inflectional morphemes, and this is one of this, that modify verbs, tense, mood aspect, nouns, also here nouns that we could see in the possessive or plurality. So you are modifying the noun. Boy, boys. And notice, boys is one word with but two morphemes. Boy is the lexical morpheme, and the S, notice the letter S is a grammatical morpheme. It has a grammatical meaning. Remember, it has a grammatical meaning. The letter S, that's why here before says graphemic. Just the letter S has meaning. S is not a word. And the letter S is not a word, but it has a meaning because it's an inflectional morpheme. Remember, inflectional morphemes don't change that type of word. We change the meaning, no? From singular to plural. So we're changing the meaning, but not that type of word. Derivational morphemes change that type of word and the meaning in most of the cases. So notice, the apostrophe S is another inflectional morphemes. And we produce in different ways in the pronunciation. For example, boy, boys, z. So you write the letter S, but you pronounce with the sound z, boys, boys. An example with the possession, the possessive. For example, you have here John's car. How do you pronounce this apostrophe S? Like S or like Z? How do you pronounce it? Pronounce it. How do you pronounce this apostrophe S after John? John's or John's?
Like the second sound?
Aha, the second one. John's with the sound Z. And here we are producing allomorphs. So these are called allomorphs, different ways in order to produce this morpheme. And these allomorphs are related to the phonological aspect of the language. Why do we change the sound here? Why do we produce the sound Z instead of S? Because of the vibration. John finishes in a voice sound. That is a sound is a voice sound. So the rule says, no, this grammatical and phonological, no, this is a phonological rule, says that if the word finishes in a voice sound, the apostrophe S is produced with another voice sound. Voice, voiced. That's why you use the sound Z, because the sound Z is voiced. Remember, voice, when I say voice, means that it has vibration. All right? So voice, voiced. Assimilation. We call this assimilation. Notice all the things that involves in the form and structure, not just how we make it, also how we pronounce it. And we have a connection with the meanings. Notice here these two. So we have inflecting nouns. So we use this structure to inflect nouns, and we produce allomorphs. Allomorphs are the physical variations of a morpheme. Remember, physical variations of a morpheme. These are the allomorphs, right? So we are going to produce the morpheme in different ways. We don't change the morpheme because the morpheme is the apostrophe S, which means possession. We change how we produce it, the physical aspect, and specifically to the sounds, to the sounds. Let's continue with the other one, the meaning, semantics. For example, here you have some examples of the possessive case, no? A debtor's prison, a month's holiday, Jack's wife, my brother's hand, Shakespeare tragedies. Notice that this example is just not related to possession. We use the apostrophe S to describe something, to talk about amounts, to talk about relationships, like Jack's wife, to talk about part and whole, my brother's hand, to talk about origin, an agent. Notice the different meanings that we could give to the apostrophe S. Not just possession. Not just possession. We have different meanings for this structure, for this pattern. And as I told you before, related to the use, so we need to know when to use this possessive case, the apostrophe or the genitive case, or use the possessive determiners, or use the of the, or use the non-compounds. So we need to know when to use this possessive case. So notice here all the aspects referring to some grammatical structures. We have 3 dimensions: form, meaning, use. Let's continue. Oh, sorry, my drawings. Let's see another example. Phrasal verbs. This is another structure, another pattern in the English language. Phrasal verbs. What is a phrasal verb? Can you tell me? What is a phrasal verb? Tell me, please. What is a phrasal verb?
They are ideas, but the most important word in the phrasal verb is the verb. The verb is the root?
Yeah. Don't get confused with verb phrases and phrasal verbs. It's different. What you told me, I think, is the verb phrase. We have some structures when the principal word is the verb, and we have the nouns or objects, or complements, but the main element is the verb. This is a verb phrase. But what about the phrasal verbs?
Teacher, they are verbs plus an article, like look up. Could be an example.
Yeah, that's it. So phrasal verbs are not just basic verbs, composed by just one word. These phrasal verbs are composed by 2 or 3 words when we have a verb plus a particle. Let's see. Let's analyze it. My mouse. Oh, no. Yeah. Remember, we're going to analyze this structure in 3 dimensions: its form, its meaning, and its use. Phrasal verbs. As Janela says, the way that we make up, we compose a phrasal verb is joining a verb plus a particle, or verb plus particle plus preposition. So with 2 elements, 3 words, but they have just one meaning. Remember, one meaning. And these phrasal verbs could be separable or inseparable, transitive or intransitive. So we can separate this verb or we cannot. They could be transitive or intransitive. Can you remember these terms? Transitive and intransitive verbs? Can you remember about it? Transitive and intransitive verbs?
I don't know if it's the same in Spanish. Transitive is when you have an object.
Exactly, yes.
And the intransitive, we have
no object. Exactly. We have no object. Yes. So remember, in the languages, we could have some general principles. This is one of these general principles of languages, the kind of verbs that we usually have in the language. We divide verbs into transitive and intransitive verbs. So, and it's the same in all the languages. In all the languages, we call this universal grammar. I don't know if you have heard about this term. universal grammar, some general principles that all languages share. And this is one of these. No? We divide the verbs in transitive and intransitive. Similar as Lucy says, this is equal to Spanish. No? Verbs which take an object and verbs which don't take an object. If they take an object, they are transitive. If they don't take an object, they are intransitive. So phrasal verbs has also this categorization. Some of these phrasal verbs are followed by an object, and some of them are not followed by an object. For example, get up. This is a very famous phrasal verb. This is a phrasal verb. Get up. Get is the verb, and up is the particle. It's not a preposition. But teacher, up doesn't mean that you have to move over, above. Yeah, but here, up is not a preposition. Up is a particle. Get up, because it's part of the verb. These two words have just one meaning. We don't have two meanings. If they were separated and it is a preposition, so we have two meanings. But we don't have two meanings. We have one meaning. Get up means one thing. And this verb, first, is not separable. You cannot separate it. All right? You cannot separate it. It's not possible to say, oh, teacher, today I got up at 8. It's not possible to say, oh, teacher, today I got at 8 up. No, you cannot do that, right? You cannot do that. You cannot separate it. And also, it is intransitive because it doesn't have an object. I get up at 8. What is the object? There's no object. Just a complement, no? That you are indicating the time, but it's not an object. Remember, when we talked about object, it doesn't mean just a thing, no? It could be a person or a place and something more, no? So this is intransitive. Get up, this famous phrasal verb that we usually use in the morning, no? When you talked about something that you do in the morning, no? One of the things, the first activities that we do in the morning, no? I get up at 7, I get up at 6. So you use it a lot, right? So this phrasal verb is inseparable, not inseparable, and it's intransitive. And it's composed by a verb plus a particle. Meaning. Phrasal verbs, remember, some of them have literal meaning, but most of them have a figurative meaning, and also they could have multiple meanings, not just one meaning. Depending on the context that you use this phrasal verb, you change it. And the use. You use it more in informal discourse. Remember, phrasal verbs are used principally in informal discourse, and we have a principle of dominance. So the particle, which part of the verb, no, because it's composed by 2 or 3 elements, which of these parts of the verbs are dominant? Let's see some examples. Here we have some examples. The form and structure. Look up. A verb plus a particle. Keep up with. So you have 3, notice 3 words, but with just one meaning. Keep up with means that you have to be updated. And this is the meaning of keep up with. Keep up with, to be updated, to be informed with actual news, no? New news. All right, this is keep up with. So notice we have this composition. This is the form. Notice this is the form, a verb plus a particle, or a verb plus a particle plus preposition or another particle. Now, separable or inseparable. Look up the word. It's a separable verb. So you could say look the word up. But notice here the meaning of look up. Look up. It doesn't mean that you have to look above you or over you. No. What is the meaning of look up here? Search. Look up here means search. Search a word in a dictionary. This is the meaning of look up. It doesn't mean that you have to look high. No, no, no. All right? So there is a difference. There is a difference. So I'm going to write here the sentence in order to notice the difference. If you're using a preposition or you're using a particle and it's a phrasal verb. Notice here. Yeah, I'm going to write here a sentence, yeah, in order to differentiate. Yeah, look at here. I'm looking, oh no, what happened with my looking up the sky? Here, looking up or look up, here, it's a phrasal verb or not? I'm looking up the sky. Can you tell me? I'm using here look up as a phrasal verb or not? Aha, no. I'm not using it as a phrasal verb because I'm referring the direction of my looking. I'm looking upside, no? So to a high position, all right? I'm moving my head to an up position to look at the sky. I'm looking up the sky. Notice here you have a verb plus a preposition. Now, a phrasal verb. Notice it's the same structure. I'm looking, oh, again, oh, my keyboard today, so awful. I'm looking up a word. Notice, looking up. But here, this looking up is a phrasal verb. Because the meaning of this verb is search. It means that you're saying, I'm searching a word. And the context means that you are searching the word in a dictionary. I'm looking up a word. Now here, look up is a verb plus a particle, not a preposition. Notice the difference. Be careful on that. Be careful on that. Because sometimes we confuse and we could say that this is a preposition, but it's not a preposition. It's part of a verb, a phrasal verb. And we could notice that. All right? So it means, and here you could say that this phrasal verb is separable. So you can separate the two parts. The two elements are separated. And you say, look the word up. I'm looking the word up. Or you could say, I'm looking up the word. Or you could separate it with a object pronoun too. I'm looking it up. Look it up. It's divided by a preposition. For example, this is a rule about this. You use object pronouns when you separate the phrasal verbs, but you don't use it when it's together. I look up it. You cannot use I look up it. No, I look up the word or I'm looking up the word, but it's not possible to say I'm looking up it. No. You use the object pronouns between the verb and the particle. I'm looking it up. This is the way that you use the verb. And this is related to the principle of dominance. All right. This is the principle of dominance. Because here the particle dominates, the object pronoun dominates here, and it's between, no? It's between the two parts, between the verb and the particle. And get up, this is the verb that I told you, it's inseparable, you cannot separate it, and it's a intransitive. Look up is transitive because it has the object. What is the object? The word. This is the object. So it means that look up is transitive. But get up is intransitive. No object. Notice this is the form or the structure. Involves here the morphosyntactic aspect of words. All right. Let's continue with the meaning. Let's pass to the meaning. Again, here you have some examples. Literal meaning. So related to meaning, we could say that some phrasal verbs, some of them, has a literal meaning. So it has a relationship between the verb and the particle. No, hang up. So it means that you have to hang these things up. So it has a literal meaning. So you could notice, you can recognize easily. But most of them, and this is the tricky part here, most of these phrasal verbs change the original meaning of the verb. That's why we could say figurative meaning. For example, run into. It doesn't mean that you're going to run into a place. No. Run into means meet by chance. So it means that you didn't plan it. You meet a person with no planning. It was just occasionally. Maybe you were walking in the park and then you saw your best friend and you say, oh, yesterday I ran into my best friend. It doesn't mean that you ran into your best friend. No, literally. Here we don't have a literal meaning. No, because it's impossible. No, you run into your best friend. No, you have to pass the matters. No, we cannot do that. All right. It means that you meet your best friend by chance. Run into. Notice, run into. This is the figurative meaning. Now, multiple meanings. So phrasal verbs could have multiple meanings according to the context that you could choose. For example, come across has two meanings. Come across could mean discover by chance or make an impression. Notice these phrasal verbs can have multiple meanings. Here in this way, two meanings. Discover by chance or make an impression. So this is the aspect related to meaning in phrasal verbs. Notice here, so it's very important. I advise you to learn phrasal verbs. It's very, very important. It's very important. So I think when we talked about, no, I think I didn't give you. I'm going to give you a book. This book is very, very important and useful to practice phrasal verbs and idioms. I'm going to pass you this book to practice phrasal verbs and idioms depending on the context. So I'm going to give you, please try to remember that, try to maybe remember that I'm going to give you this book. It's very useful. It's very useful to learn phrasal verbs. So notice this is related to the meaning. The use, pragmatics, circumstances favoring particle movement. Circumstances favoring particle movement. So as I told you, the particle, if it is together or separated, this is the principle of dominance. Remember, when we use object pronouns, when the verb is separable, so we can separate with a noun or with an object pronoun, but we use just the object pronoun to divide, to split up this phrasal verb. We cannot use the object pronoun when it's together. Don't forget it. And we call this the principle of dominance. And remember that these phrasal verbs are used in informal discourse. It's preferable to use this in informal discourse. But as we have seen it before, language is changing, and now these phrasal verbs are also used in formal discourse. A lot of people use this in formal discourse, but it is generally supposed that we're going to use these phrasal verbs in an informal discourse. All right? So notice here grammar, the 3 dimensions of grammar. So when we talked about grammar, we talked about the form, meaning, and use. Remember, form, meaning, and use. This is the three-dimensional grammar framework. And here as teachers, we need to remember these three dimensions of grammar. So all three dimensions have to be mastered by the learner, also not necessarily consciously, no? So this is very important, no? We as teacher, we need to learn or master consciously, but the students or learners, it's not so important to learn these aspects consciously. Important information by recognizing where students need to be reinforced, no? So if you master these aspects, oh yeah, my students are not managing the structure, the form. They know the use, no, they know the meaning, but they don't manage the form, the structure, no? For example, most of our students, and also we as teachers, we couldn't manage the pronunciation of the apostrophe S, no? I think that most of us, maybe when we speak, we pronounce the apostrophe S just the sound S, not like Z or is, right? So we have some of these difficulties here, no, to recognize, and we need to reinforce in these aspects, not just the students, also we as teachers. It is not only the form of the structure what creates conflict in students, and the most significant challenge, you know, because we have also the meaning and also the use. You know? For example, I think most of our students, maybe they can write sentences in present simple, past simple, but when they have to differentiate or to use this in context, so the pragmatics, so they have some difficulties because they don't know when to use this tense. Most of them may be writing present simple, present continuous, but not with other tenses. And they don't have this aspect. Notice you can recognize, oh no, yeah, my students know how to write sentences in present simple, because when I say write sentences in present simple, they do it. Write sentences in past simple, they do it. But when I ask them to differentiate tenses, they cannot do it well. So they don't manage the use, the pragmatics aspect of the language. I need to reinforce that on my students. Notice. So it's easily for you to recognize what aspects, you know, what form of structures creates the most difficulty in your students. You know? And they need to reinforce that. Now here we're going to talk about a specific term that is called grammaring, as we have listening, reading, speaking, writing. So grammaring is considered, right? It is considered as another skill. The thinking of grammar as a skill to be mastered. That's why we call this grammaring. So it was given by Lawrence Freeman in 2001. No? So this author, the linguist, is another linguist and professor, no? Said that grammar must be considered as a skill, and we need to master this skill. That's why he called this grammaring. Let's talk about the learning process. SLA, so second language acquisition, remember, SLA means second language acquisition. SLA research on how students develop their ability to interpret and produce grammatical utterances or statements are first encounter processing usage, not accumulation of structures. So when we teach our students some structures, so they learn first the first structure that they saw, and they start using it. So they don't accumulate. Maybe it passes, and you could notice, no? Maybe you teach them the yes for present simple, no, he, she, it. But then 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months later, they couldn't manage this structure. Some of them, no, maybe some of them they could manage it, but some of them not. Because of this, because they don't accumulate the structures. They are learning this structure the way they meet. the first structure they use, or the second structure they use, so they start using it and processing. Another aspect related to the learning process is the interlanguage and backsliding. Interlanguage, I don't know if you have heard about this term, is related to the language that our students or a learner uses, combining the first language and the second language. And they could produce backsliding. Backsliding is a process of error, when they produce mistakes. Maybe they use some structure of the first language into the second language. For example, a common backsliding or interlanguage in our students is the order of the adjective and the noun. When they are learning this, so they can get the idea that the adjective is first and then the noun. So they use the structure that they have in the first language. There is, oh, teacher, yes, I have a house beautiful. I don't know, you have heard about your students saying that. Oh, I have a house beautiful. So they are using the structure of the first language, noun, adjective. Because in English, we have a different structure, right? First the adjective and then the noun. So the correct way to say that is, I have a beautiful house. So when they say, I have a house beautiful, we call this interlanguage or backsliding. So notice they are making a mistake because the first language is interfering with the structure of the second language, because they have their inner structure of the first and it dominates into the second language structure. So we call this interlanguage. There are some good aspects of interlanguage and there are some bad aspects or negative aspects of interlanguage. The positive aspect of interlanguage is that there are some structures that are similar to the second language and they could use it to get it better, to catch it faster. But there are some aspects that are not equal or similar, and it can create some problems. It could function also as a monitor. For example, our students like translating a lot. So they start translating, yo fui yo, I fui, go, when, or go it. For example, another interlanguages that they use the same term for all the ending of the verbs. For example, go, it, regular. We teach them first the past simple of regular verbs, ed, and they think that all the verbs are with ed. So they say go it. This is interlanguage. Remember, the special language that a student or learner creates in the process of learning, in the process of acquiring a second language. So this is another aspect in the learning process. Second language learners rely on the knowledge and the experience they have. This is related to the interlanguage also, and also with the real experiences, real situations. This is related to the schemata. Remember when we talked about this term, the schemata, the knowledge that they have, the experiences that they have, and confronted to the new knowledge or new experiences that they can learn with the language, with a second language. Another aspect, different learning processes are responsible for different aspects of language. This was said by Gagne and Mensker, another famous linguist people. So as you know this, we have different learning processes, and it means that we have different aspects of language, responsible for different aspects of language. If we understand our students' learning processes, we will be able to make the right teaching decisions. This is very important to remember. Try to understand our students' learning processes. I think, and I know that is so difficult because sometimes we have a lot of students, more than 30 or more than 40, and it's so complicated, it's not so easy, it's not so easy to recognize or to work with different learning processes at the same time in the same classroom is not so easy, but we must try it. No, we must try. And with this, we can be able to make the right teaching decisions. Now, what does teaching grammar mean? Let's first talking about teaching. We saw about all related to grammar. Now we are going to pass to teaching grammar. What does it mean? What does teaching grammar mean? It means enabling language students to use linguistic forms accurately, meaningfully, and appropriately. This is involved in the process of teaching grammar. So, to enable our students to use these linguistic forms accurately, meaningfully, and appropriately. This is the purpose of teaching grammar. And again, it was said by Larsen Freeman in 2001. Why should we teach grammar? Some of you told me, no? Oh yeah, we must teach grammar to make our students produce correct sentences or phrases or utterances, no? So this is one of the most important aspects to teach grammar to our students. But there are more. Let's see some of them. Sentence machine. This means that grammar is needed in order to make new sentences. This is the general purpose of grammar, no? To make sentences, to make correct sentences, or to make new sentences. Another one, fine-tuning. Grammar is needed in order to be more explicit and to make sure you don't confuse the listener or the reader. Okay? To be more explicit and not to make mistakes or to confuse the listener or the reader. Another, fossilization. Grammar teaching is needed because otherwise learners will reach a language plateau beyond which is very difficult to progress. Fossilization. What is fossilization? Maybe you have this word as when we talk about fossils, the dinosaurs, no? So we find some fossil animals, no, the mammoth or the saber tiger. Yeah, it has here another meaning. It's not related to these dead animals. Here, fossilization is some mistakes that our students make, and they do it and do it and do it again and again and again and again, and they cannot make any progress. That's why we should teach grammar to our students, to correct those mistakes, and in that way our students can improve the management of the language, the accuracy of the language, and they can progress. That's why here says they will reach a language plateau. It's a platform. Plateau is like a platform, and it's very difficult to progress. This is called fossilization. Remember, it's a repeated mistake. It's a repeated mistake, and it can avoid the improvement of the language, the management of the language. Another aspect, why should we teach grammar, is advanced organizer. When grammar is taught to learners, they will notice it and will be able to use it themselves. So students can, oh yes, now I know how to use some structures. Now I can go to other structures and I can use it in different contexts. That's why here says that is like an advanced organizer. No, yeah, now I'm going to go up to another structure. Now another one. So this is very important, no? So they could notice it and will be able to use it themselves. more aspects. Why do we teach grammar? Why should we teach grammar? Discrete item. For learners, the language might seem easier when they are taught grammar because grammar consists of rules which makes the language more clear instead of a gigantic, shapeless mass. So we have some concise information, and maybe our students could understand better. And some students, not all, some students find grammar so complicated. For example, I told my students that English grammar is so easy. Comparing to our grammar, Spanish grammar, woof. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Can you watch what I'm sharing? Yes.
Yes, teacher.
All right. So we were talking about why should we teach grammar? Now we finished with this slide and we can go to rest. So we were saying that this is very important to teach grammar because of this aspect, a discrete item. So some students, some learners, they could seem that it's easier when they are taught using grammar, because they have some specific information, rules, and makes the language more clear instead of gigantic, shapeless mass of language, of structure, pattern, vocabulary. The other one is the rule of law. Grammar is a great way for having a structure in class, especially with unruly and unmotivated students. It is easier to teach than, for example, speaking, So teaching grammar in some situations is not so complicated to teach it, So if we compare with other skills, for example, speaking, so to teach speaking, it involves more time, different strategies or techniques to use to make our students speak, And the last one is the learner expectations. Students might expect being taught grammar, so in order not to turn them down, you'll teach the grammar. So notice, here you have this different aspects. Why should we teach grammar? Now remember, in order to make new sentences, in order to be more explicit, not to confuse the listener or the reader, all our learners would improve the management of the language, not to making a lot of fossilization process, or they can be motivated. If we notice that they are learning some structures, some patterns, and they could be able to use these sentences or structures or patterns. The other ones is some students could consider easier to learn grammar than other aspects of the language. And the last one is that students might expect being taught grammar, so we can teach them grammar to our students. All right. So these are the important aspects. Why should we teach grammar? All right. Well, that's all for this session. Next session, we're going to continue talking about how to present grammar. So we are going to analyze different activities that we're going to use and different methods that we could use in order to teach grammar. Now, today we have talked about what is grammar, the importance of grammar, why should we teach grammar. Next session, next Saturday, we were talking about different activities, different methods that we could use to teach grammar. Now, remember that these two first sessions is related to grammar, and then the other two sessions, the third and the fourth session, we're going to pass to the vocabulary. Now, remember that this module is related to these two aspects of the language, grammar and vocabulary. Now, this ninth module is related to this, grammar and vocabulary. The first two sessions, grammar, and the second two sessions, vocabulary. All right. Well, that's all for today. Sorry for this interruption. Sometimes the internet connection is so awful, so awful. So as I told you, I'm using my my cell phone connection in order to continue with the class. Well, that's all for today. See you next session. Take care a lot. Bye-bye.
Take care, teacher. Bye-bye.
Thanks, teacher.
Bye-bye. Take care too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm going to send you the book, yeah, in order to reinforce the aspect of the phrasal verbs. Remember, and idioms. This book is very useful. It's going to be useful for you. Okay, so bye-bye. See you. Take care a lot.